Welcome to the Visible and Unstoppable podcast. I am your host, Louise Kirk, and I help women to have the confidence to be seen, sell, and succeed. And today I have a very special guest, Sausha Davis. And she is a high performance sales strategist, coach, and founder of the Sales Mama, which is a global brand helping women to master the art of confident, aligned sales. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
So I'm just going to jump straight in because Sasha and I have already spoken before. And so you are in for a treat, possibly a few rants and all the glorious stuff in between. But for you, I just wanted to dig into, I hear a lot, especially in the space around aligned sales. And so when
Mhm.
you talk about aligned sales, what does that mean for you?
For me, it means doing sales in a way that feels good to you because the biggest thing that I hear is sales is gross, sales is slimy. I don't want to do sales. I don't want people to think that I'm salesy. And so I want to do it in a way that feels good and fun and feels like connection versus this transaction.
And I definitely find that same with a lot of my clients because we want to find ways that feel good. And there's definitely a lot of things out there that,
Mhm.
especially the type of women that we probably support, don't want to do. And that's perfectly fine. But also, where do you find with your clients as well? Because sometimes what I find with women is that they're given a strategy, for example, for selling, but it's not necessarily that there's anything bad about the strategy. It's not like, you know what I mean? It's not a pushy tactic. It's not inauthentic, but it's that fear, right? The fear still exists around being bothersome or salesy. And so they
Mhm.
can typically then write off and go, well, this doesn't feel aligned to me. Like it's
Yep.
just selling, full stop, does not feel aligned. And so
Mhm.
they kind of like step back from selling full stop. How do you notice that something as well with some of the women that you support? And how do you support them to still sell in a way that feels really good?
Yeah. So it's interesting that you say that because that is a huge thing that comes up for a lot of women is they have fear around sales or they had a bad sales experience. And so one of the first things that I do is we want to dive into where that comes from. And so not that I take people through like a hypnosis or anything, but anybody that's listening, if they're familiar with inner child work, it's kind of like inner sales work, if you will. So it's going back to that first time that you had a nasty experience with sales and seeing if we can move through it because chances are there's a lot of emotion and negative experience around that sales process, sales experience, or somebody had pushed something on them and they're holding on to that. And so, if we didn't have any resistance to it, we wouldn't have any issue doing it. But we've built up this resistance because of some previous experience that we've had or some projection that somebody has had on us. And so, this is where that mindset work comes in, where we really have to get to the root of why they are feeling gross, icky, slimy, fearful, all of these things around sales and changing our perspective on it. And so when I've done that with women where we dive deep into, okay, this is the first time you felt nasty, or maybe it's a fear around money, or maybe it's a fear of asking for things, right? Or fear of visibility. Like that's another thing that comes up. So we figure out the core of that, move through it and try to write a new story, if you will. And so it's quite a process. It's not just like, oh, Luis, you better stop talking about this and do this thing, like what most people say. They're like, suck it up and get over it. But when you do that, you'll only do it for a short amount of time and it's not sustainable long term. Whereas if you go and do the deep inner work, you can have that sustainability with your sales growth.
You're right. And I love that you blend the two because, as you said, you can have a strategy, but if you kind of like push, push, push through, but all the
Mhm.
time it gets like your nervous system is like, oh, I hate this. Oh, I hate this. Oh, you eventually either just kind of burn yourself out because you're pushing so hard that it makes it feel hard, right? As opposed to just being able to pick up the phone and call someone or send the DM, which is like actually in itself an easy task, right? It's the emotional attachment. And I think what I found with so many of my clients too, when they have this fear of sales, is it's so complex.
Yep.
It's not just, well, I don't want to do this particular strategy because there's so many different ways to sell. So it's easy to find a way, right? That
Yeah.
feels good. But if you essentially have this inner resistance to selling, then nothing will work. Like there's just not a specific strategy. And I found as well for my clients, it's yes, 100%. Sometimes it's like a past experience of
Okay.
sell of being sold to. But also for some of my clients, it's been like way back in childhood where they've been told, don't bother people. You're so bothersome. And so
Yep.
when it comes to following people up, they're like, oh, what if people think I'm bothering them?
Yep. You're exactly right, and I mean, that's what happens, and we do some inner child work because there's people who have gone back and, for example, like my parents, they were, well, mostly my father because I lived with him as I was, growing up, but he was like, "Money doesn't grow on trees, and salespeople are slime balls," because you'd always get, like, the door knockers and stuff, right? And people are like, "Ah, don't open the door for those guys, they're just trying to sell you
Yeah.
something you don't need," and so we have all of these past experiences around sales and we bring those with us. And if we don't write a new story and a new narrative around it, we'll continue to have that loop on repeat. And you have to literally rewire that. Otherwise, you are still going to have so much resistance and pressure built up around this simple task, if you will, and remove yourself from the situation, remove all of those negative emotions from the situation, and just look at it for what it is. It's you connecting with people, it's you trying to solve a problem. And you are the one that's putting your ego into it. So when we remove the ego from it, it becomes a really simple task, and that can be very scalable.
Absolutely. And you nailed it. It's like once you remove that emotion
Uh-huh.
from whatever the task is, it's really easy and it's more effortless and it's quicker. And like you said, you can scale it, right? And you put
Yeah.
systems in place, even, for these things because there's just the resistance is no longer there. And I was wondering, how is it that you ended up in this place where you were teaching women around aligned sales?
Well, sales found me. I didn't find sales. If you would have told me when I was a kid, "Oh, Sasha, you're going to have a business teaching sales," I would have thought I thought you were pretty funny. I actually wanted to be a vet when I was a kid, or a horse trainer, like something like that. So now I just have a ton of animals. But so, long story short, I actually was in the corporate environment for quite some time. And when I had my first child, I decided that, I needed to do something different because I didn't want to basically pay somebody else to raise my kids. And I was working really long hours. I was in, corporate sales, management, customer service. I ran a region, so three different manufacturing plants, and actually sold corrugated containers, which is a fancy word for cardboard boxes. So you can imagine how much fun that was. But I was good at it. I was really good at it. But it's not where I wanted to be. And so somebody had planted a seed like, "Hey, Sasha, the things that you're doing here and like your leadership abilities, you can actually do something for yourself. You can coach, you can consult." And at the time, I mean, this was like 10 years ago, like coaching was not what it was today. And so I started off and just was kind of throwing noodles at a wall to see what stuck. And I started off in the life and health space, believe it or not. And then that transitioned into more of like life and business coaching. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, I rebranded to Sales Mama because I had a very interesting two experiences. The first one being that I was kind of butting heads with somebody who I was consulting for. And he didn't say anything negative, but the way that he made me feel about how I was doing sales made me feel like I was an idiot and I didn't know what I was doing. And like I had to do it this other way, even though that I had proven that this way that I was teaching was successful and it was working and we were getting sales and people were happy. And so, anyways, him and I parted ways and I was feeling very defeated. So I thought, oh, I'll just go find a female sales mentor and all will be right in the world. So I went down the rabbit hole of trying to find a female sales mentor, and I found one who I thought I would like and get on a phone call with her, have a phone call, a sales call. We get to the end, and she says to me, and maybe it was reverse psychology, I don't know, but either way, it totally pissed me off because she says to me, "You're not going to have the level of success that you want because you prioritize your family too much and you're not willing to do the things to get, and so I was like, you have got to be kidding me. Like, on one hand, I'm being told that this connection based and personality based sales is a bunch of crap. And then on the other hand, I'm being told, like, as a mom, that I'm not going to be successful basically because I have children and that this is only going to be a side hustle. And I'm one of those people that, like, if you tell me I can't do something, I'm like, watch me do all the things. And so, really, it was the catalyst that I needed at the time to take what I was doing to the next level. And so, literally that next day, Sales Mama was born. I'm like, I'm going to teach sales the way that I want to teach it, to who I want to teach it, and how I want to teach it, when I want to teach it, and make it for accessible to the right people and help them get to that next level without the burnout, without the overwhelm, without the black and white strategy, one size fits all thing. And so here we are about, yeah, 4 or 5 years later. So,
You proved them wrong.
yes, I was very spiteful when I first started. I was like, I'm going to show everybody. And now I just do it because I love it. But, sometimes you need that little fire under your ass to make things happen. So,
It gives you that sense of urgency. But I think
yes,
you did touch on something, and you get mixed messages, I feel, especially
all the
across,
time.
the internet and marketing these days of, there's this contrast of, the very kind of old school way of you have to do everything, commit everything, sacrifice everything, sleep in your office if you want to be successful, which for a lot of women in particular, and I'd say like some men, but especially women, like it's not accessible. Like that's not something we can do if we hold
No,
children or caring responsibilities, right? Maybe you have another job or you have health issues. But then you
yes,
also have this other narrative that I've noticed a lot lately running of like, you can just do whatever you want, spend your time however you want, and money will just, land in your lap essentially, or you can
yes,
have it all, right? And kind of like really laying on this message to women, you can have it all. Like you can be a present mum, you can have an amazing partner and be an amazing partner and have a super successful business. Oh, and by the way, you can look gorgeous at the same time, right? And I
yeah.
feel like sometimes this messaging for women sets them up almost with either way, like a lose-lose, because they
Oh,
know
yeah,
they
it's a
can't
total
go
failure.
all in, right? They know
Mhm.
they can't go all in. So they're like, and especially for me, I remember, having a mentor who had this like, you have to stay up till 2 a.m. And I was up with my kids. My kids were not sleeping. So I'd be up with my kids and I'd still be up until 2 a.m. And then I'd still be up at 4. Then I'd be up at 6 and I'd be getting up at everyone at 7. And then no, of course, burnout, right? But
Yep.
I felt the guilt and the shame of being like, well, maybe I just don't want it hard enough because they weren't taking into the consideration that my work day is not my work day. My work
Mhm.
day continues after my work day finishes. And
Yep.
so it's not that women aren't working hard, but on the other narrative I see now is almost this telling women that you can have it all. And it's not that you can't have it all, but you have to have it in a different way, right?
Yes.
Like the reality is you still need time to build a business. You still need time for your kids. And so like your capacity is limited. And so then again,
Yes.
when women go, well, I should be having it all and like all being all like the top amazing things, that they again feel like they're failing. And it should be effortless and it should be easy and it should just feel aligned with life. And
Yeah.
so what do you see at the moment of like, because I know you're a mum as well, like
Oh.
what do you see supports women the most to be able to actually, I don't want to say have it all, but find more of that balance where they can actually
Mhm.
build a successful business without destroying themselves, without being up till 2 a.m., but also like acknowledging the fact that there is work to be done.
Yeah. And I love that you brought this up because there's like two extremes that I see out there. There is hustle, 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 work as much as you can, call as many people as you can. Like sales is just a numbers game, blah, 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 blah. And that's like the old, what I consider old, outdated, very masculine, pushy, black and white type of sales, right? And then we have on the other side where we have like the manifestation where, and don't get me wrong, like I believe in manifestation and law of attraction, but it's almost to an extreme where it's like, all I have to do is sit here and think about it and success will come to me. And that is so false because manifest literally means to make reality, to become real, to create something, right? And so creation takes action. And yes, I understand that like your thoughts are things, but we have to act on those things too. And I think that's the missing piece where a lot of these manifestation experts are coming in where they're like, "Oh, just sit and think about it, or just put it out there, or just create this thing and people will come. And that is so far from the truth. And then we have these people selling that false narrative. And that's how they actually make money is it's like, oh, well, I built it by this way because it was easy and effortless. So they're selling easy and effortless to people who will never experience that easy and effortless because it's a different product. It's a different service. And so they're not selling, you know what I mean? It's like the product that sells the product that sells the product. It's the coaches and, and so it's this whole pyramid scheme in and of itself. And so, how I like to approach it is from that quote unquote balanced perspective, right? You have to have the yin and the yang, the light and the dark, the feminine and the masculine. And so, I don't think of it as perfectly balanced. I like to think of it as you and I are walking a tightrope and we have our balance beam. And so, there's some days where your business is going to be higher, and then there's some days where your family is going to be higher. You're never going to be perfectly balanced on this balance beam of life. You will adjust, you'll shift your weight to accommodate certain things so that you stay on the beam, you stay on the path, right? And so what I tell people is first thing that we have to do is figure out what your actual capacity is. Like, what do you actually have capacity for? And so capacity meaning time, energy, money, resources, all of those things. Because what people will think is they have, oh, I have 40 hours a week because that's what I used to do at my other job. But when you work from home, that's not the case. There's so many distractions. There are, for myself, I have kids, I have animals, I have, I'm taking kids to school, I'm taking kids to sports, I'm, sitting down at work. So being very strategic in the times that I do work. And then anything that falls outside of that, I think about how can I create a system or an automation or ask for support so that I can expand my capacity without necessarily taking more time out of my day, because I don't want to quote unquote work more, but I still want to make a bigger impact and I still want to expand. And so this is where people can systemize things and automate things and duplicate things and hire people or ask for help. And that's really where I think that women or moms or people who care for others can have success, is by really admitting that they're not the only one that can do all the things and that it does take a village, but you have to create that village. They're not just going to show up at your door.
100%. Because as women, like you said, we can't do everything. And I think
No.
sometimes we've been nailed in that narrative of you can have everything, you can do everything. Look at you, superwoman, look at you go. And then, like, inevitably, you leads you to like burnout, frustration,
Yes.
resentment, either in your relationships or even towards your business. Because especially in those earlier days when you have to put in a lot more effort than what you receive back, because you're still
Yeah.
building the foundations, right? No one knows who you are. You're still learning, especially if you don't have a business background, like how to actually build a business, how to actually get all the skills to get the people in the first place. And so there can also be a lot of that resentment towards your business. Like, I'm giving so much and I'm waiting to get anything back, in relationships. And so I think you nailed it too of like, well, actually putting in more support around. And sometimes that's not in your business, but sometimes that's at home if you have that opportunity, right? Not everyone has a partner or family around, but like, what can you put in? And I think sometimes as women, we just take on so much of the responsibility without anyone
Mhm.
asking us to. We just, by default, everything is ours, and struggle to like really let go of that
Yeah.
control that we have. Um, and like you said, we can't do it all. It's
No.
such a challenge. So
One
what
of the things
systems
I
then sorry, you
Go
carry
ahead.
on. I was gonna ask, what systems and support did you find like putting into your business or your life that enabled you, as you said, to actually expand that capacity?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I was going to say is one of the things that I hear the most out of women is if I'm not doing it, it's not going to get done right. And that's a whole
Mm.
nother thing in and of itself where we have this belief system that if I'm not the only one doing it, and that's really just a self sabotaging pattern. That's like a martyr syndrome, right? Where we're saying that I'm the only one. Well, you are now the inhibitor of your own growth because anybody who has, grown a business or, anything like that, like a lot of times it takes more than one person. So, but when I first started, I mean, I started making hires right away when I started making money because I was like, I do not want to be doing all of this by myself. But my hardest thing was learning to ask for help because I was like, I'll hire people. I don't care. Have them fix it, right? Or have them help me. But I had to really learn how to ask for help like effectively. But one of the very first hires that I had was actually a house cleaner. So I mean, my house was a mess because I was at home all the time, but it was either a total mess or it was like totally spotless. So something was always giving. You know, I was either a clean house and my business was lacking, or my house was a disaster and my business was thriving. And so that was like super mental clutter for me. So one of the very first things that I actually did was hire a house cleaner when I first started. And she came, I think like 4 or 6 hours once a week and just did like a whole deep clean. And it was such like mental clarity for me because I didn't have to do all the deep cleaning. All I basically had to do throughout the week was like dishes and laundry. And I was like, hell yeah, like this is awesome. So that was one of the first things that I did was actually not a business expense. And I mean, it could have been, you know, but really it was like a personal thing to help me have more time and energy because as I was cleaning my house, there was two things happening. I was thinking of all the things that I could do with my kids and all the things that I could do in my business. Right. And so that's where my brain was the whole time. And I thought to myself, if I have a business doing something that I love, there's probably somebody out there that has a business cleaning houses that absolutely loves it. And so why not pay somebody else to do something that they enjoy where I don't really enjoy this that much and I can actually go hang out with my kids instead. So I call this buying back time. So I was basically buying back my time to go do something that filled my cup and that energized me. So then I actually got more stuff done in my business. And then as I started to, you know, increase, you know, my own sales and my own business, the next thing that I hired was a virtual assistant, somebody to help me manage like calendars and admin tasks and some of the back end things. And that was also a big game changer. And today I have 5 team members. You know, I have a sales support, I have a concierge, I have like an accountability person. So I have different compartments or departments, however you want to say it, in my company now to help me in certain areas. But I had to grow into that because asking for help and asking for what you need, I have learned is a skill within itself.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on it there too, like this attitude of if I don't do it myself, it won't get done. And I
Yeah.
don't think it's that necessarily people, you know, women believe that they're the best and the best at it sometimes. This is not just, you know, in terms of your business, but at home, right? Like there's other
Mhm.
people who could do the laundry, there's other people
Mhm.
who could do the dishes.
Yep.
But sometimes when I speak to, you know, my clients, a lot of it comes down to that, well, a few things, but you know, that lack of trust. Like, can I trust the other person will do it
Uh-huh.
and do it to a standard where I don't then have to step in and
Yep.
still do it? So they feel like this is going to be a negative consequence to themselves, right? Because if that person doesn't do it, I'm going to have to swoop in and like, and a lot of that comes down to they don't give away responsibility because they
Yep.
still keep hold of the control. And so they delegate. And when you delegate, if something doesn't happen, it's now your responsibility to step in, as opposed to going, this is no longer my responsibility. This is
Uh-huh.
all yours. And so, therefore, if it doesn't get done to a standard, or, you know, if you forgot to go pick this thing up from the shops, it's on you. Like
Yes.
you're cleaning up the mess, right? And
Uh-huh.
that's where I feel like a lot of women, especially more so in their, you know, partnerships, really struggle because it's also that loss of control. Because even though they don't want to do it, even though they're resentful to their partners for not doing more, they still hold on to that control if they hold on to how everything is run in their lives. And so,
Yeah.
do you find the same as well when it comes to women trying to delegate things in their business as well? 'Cause they know, like, there's 100 social media people who do way better job than me, right? Like, a way better job than some might not, right? Let's be honest. But, you know, there are definitely people who do, jobs that I'm not that great at. So, do you find that also that kind of transfer of trust is not quite there?
Oh, absolutely. And it is typically at home first, where, oh, I don't trust my kids to do this, or I don't trust my partner to do this, or I always have to swoop in and save the day. And again, that is a self sabotaging pattern because you are not actually giving responsibility. You are just really delegating a task and saying, well, if you don't do it, I guess I'll come clean up the mess. And so, historically speaking, if or for that situation, if you're always there cleaning up the mess, then of course you have conditioned those people around you that, hey, if I half-ass this or if I don't actually do this, mom is going to come in and she's going to clean up the mess. Whereas if you delegate the entire responsibility to someone and you're like, listen, this is either going to get done or it's not, it's all on you. You won't have clean clothes if you don't do this thing. You won't have a car if you don't do this thing. You won't have, and so you put the responsibility on the other person, but you also have to let go of that control. And I think that's what, women really struggle with. And they always want to have things, the right way. And so I do see it in business too, where they'll go to make a hire. And this is probably the biggest thing is, I've worked with people who have already made hires and they say, oh, I've hired somebody, it didn't work out. And I say, okay, well, can you show me your SOPs, like your processes for this person? Well, I don't have any of that stuff. I'm like, well, there you go. That's probably why that person wasn't successful, is because you didn't have it documented anywhere to train them successfully or to set them up for success. You basically said, hey, I need this thing done with no criteria, no deadline, no due date, no nothing, no information, just, hey, here's this pile of things that I need you to get done. Well, they're going to do it to the best of their ability without reading your mind. But this is where we need to have those systems and processes. So, for example, if you have somebody checking your email, you need to have when they need to check it, how they need to check it, what do they need to report to you, what goes to spam, what goes to this folder, what goes to that folder. And so being very super specific, so that if you fell off the face of the planet, somebody could come in and pick up right where you left off. And so you can have this as a house manual, a car manual, a business manual, but really you need to have a process and a manual for just about everything in your business, not only to save you time and energy, but when you have somebody to come in, you can say, hey, here's the process for it. And if you don't follow the process, this is what happens, type of thing. So people just don't have processes, and then they expect people to do everything the way that they want it done without ever explaining anything to them. And that's just setting them up for failure.
100%. So there you go, ladies. You need processes, not just for your hires, but for your husbands.
Yes, for everybody. I mean, it's like when we leave to go on vacation, like I have an entire booklet that's like, here's how, like for our house sitter, like, here's how you do chores. Here's how you feed the dogs. This is when you feed the dogs. This is where all of their stuff is. Here's all the emergency contact information. It's not just like, oh, come to my house and wing it. I mean, it would probably be fine. But if I want a certain outcome or a certain result, I need to set that person up for success by giving them a blueprint. And I think that's what a lot of people miss is they don't have a blueprint for their business. They don't have a blueprint for their life. They don't have a blueprint for hiring people or for their sales process or their marketing process or really anything. They're just winging it. And then they wonder why they're tired and overwhelmed and anxious. And it's like, well, you're storing all of this in your brain. Like, get it out on paper so that you don't have to be the one that's holding on to this. Like, let go of some things and let the computer do its work. Let AI do its work. Let your husband do the work. Let your VA do the work. Like, other people are able to do it if you would just get the stuff out of your head and onto paper.
I love that so much. So we're all going to sit down. Like in my mind right now, I'm like, what am I writing for my husband tonight? He's going to come home with this big list. He'll be like, who you
He's
been
gonna be like,
talking to?
who'd you talk to about this? This sucks.
Where did this come from?
But what I tell people, like in their business, is the easiest thing to do is to record yourself as you're doing a task. So, for example, there's this site called Loom, LOOM.com. All right. I know a lot of people have heard of it, but there's still a lot of people that haven't. And so basically what you can do is screen record yourself and you talking, because it will have a little box with your face in it, and screen record, and you can talk through exactly what you are doing. And in a 5-minute video, it will also create a transcript. Throw that puppy into ChatGPT and say, hey, create an SOP for me based off of this. And so you can have the video, you can have the process, you can have like everything done in literally 10 minutes. And so think about the things that you do on a daily, weekly, repeatable basis. Record yourself and start creating a process around it, because at some point it will be something that you can delegate and you'll just have it in a bank of resources. And some people even sell their SOP. So it could be an additional revenue stream for your business. Like, think about how you meal plan. Like, that could be an SOP. Think about your morning routine. There's all of these things that if you start to document the right way, I mean, not only can they be incredible resources for yourself, but they could actually be a paid resource that you offer within your business too.
There's so many great ideas. And when you are thinking about, the biggest struggles that your clients have or the women that you work with outside of the delegating, what would you say are like their biggest challenges when it comes to running their business?
Fear around money, either making money or keeping money. And so that comes up because I work with a lot of people who do mid to high ticket sales. And so they will discount almost immediately. Like, let's say, for example, I was working with somebody and they have a $10,000 product, but they don't believe in their $10,000 product. They know that the worth is there and the value is there, but there's some type of block around, am I worthy of this? Or can I actually get money for this? And so they have all of that belief within them, and they actually project that into their sales conversation so that when they get to the point of doing a pitch where they're like, hey, it's a one-time investment of $10,000, they will say it in a shaky way, not a confident way, and then what they'll do is they'll immediately discount it afterwards. But today you can get it for this. Or if they have any money objections, they'll go straight to discounting. And so there is this fear around money and this lack of self worth, if you will, lack of confidence around how do we handle objections? How do we talk through the no? And so that's probably the biggest thing that I see.
I think you're right in terms of it's not just how do I hold a sales call? It's being able to hold your confidence. And a lot of it
Yeah.
does come down to those money stories or the fear of the no that women hold, where, like you said, they either go, well, they doubt that their self worth. Like, am I really, especially if it's a service? A lot
Uh-huh.
of my clients offer services more than products. And so they almost dealt, well, am I worth the money? Even though what they're selling is the outcome, they take it very personally. And so
Uh-huh.
they're so desperate for that yes to confirm, oh, I am worth it. People do want me. Like I am good enough that they start slashing prices or they don't even mention, like maybe I just won't talk about the investment. Maybe I'll say, well, this is a great call. I'll be in touch or expect the other person to offer. They'll just be like, well, if they want to work with me, they would say. It's like, well, they're on the sales call with you, so they're interested. They're interested in working with you. It's
Yep.
just they're not sure yet, right? And so a lot of that does come down to, like you said, some of those money stories, but also like their own self-worth and doubting, like, can I charge that much?
Yeah, it
And so
is. It's a huge thing that comes up, and a lot of service-based providers, like, that's a big majority of the folks that I work with too, and they'll tie their skills and abilities directly to their self-worth and that productivity to their self-worth. And so how I tell people, you have to remove yourself from your skills. You have to remove yourself from your business. And so, one of the things that I tell people, if they really struggle with this in the beginning, is I'll use myself for an example. So, I would say, to work with Sales Mama, it's a one time investment of, or it's monthly payments of, and I would use Sales Mama instead of to work with me. And so I'm almost
Mm.
making my business its own entity, and I am an employee of my business, right? And so as you start to scale it that way, you think of your skills and your business as its own thing, and then you can start to remove yourself from it a little bit more so that you can go on about your personal life without having to take all of that heaviness or whatever with you, and just let it be part of the business, and just recognize that the no has nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. You are just the mirror that's holding up, hey, this is the thing that you want. Is this actually it or not? And so you're that person that's conversing back with them on whether or not it's a good fit. And not that you just want to sit there and like answer questions, like you're not an order taker. A good salesperson is going to come up with solutions to any obstacles or objections that they have. But that's probably the biggest thing that I see there too.
Such a great tip. Because if you were working for someone else and your job was to
Uh-huh.
offer this thing, this product or this service, most people wouldn't have a problem. They'd just be like, oh, well, it's like, because it's that detachment from me. It's like, I'm
Yep.
selling this thing for this other person or whatever it is, as opposed to I'm selling myself. I
Mhm.
love that. I'm gonna tell everyone about that.
Yeah,
I
it
am now.
really helps. I mean, especially those who are like just getting started and they have a hard time, even pitching on a sales call because you made a good point where some people are like, okay, I'll send you a quote or I'll be in touch.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, this is your opportunity to talk about ways that you guys can work together, and finances is part of that. And if you say, it's a one-time payment of this, or it's a monthly payments of this, or to work together, it's this, and they have time objection, or they have time issues, or money issues, or spouse issues, or they're unsure if it's going to work for them, you are not going to be able to solve that. Typically, in an email, you're going to want to have a conversation around it. So, how I say is get your entire pitch out there, work through all of the objections if any. Sometimes you have such a smooth sales call that, if you're pre-framing right, if you're overcoming objections in your nurture sequences and some of these things that we automate, a lot of times people won't even have that many objections by the time they get to the call because you've already answered a lot of their questions ahead of time. So really the only things that you guys need to find out on that call is, do we actually like each other enough to work with each other, type of thing. And so I think if you have all of that worked out, then your sales call is going to go that much smoother. And yes, you can follow up with them afterwards if they don't book on the call. And so this is where the BAM fam comes in, book a meeting from a meeting. And so before you leave a call, you want to make sure that you have clear steps on what is going to actually happen after that. And so everybody loves clear expectations. Everybody loves knowing what's going to come next. And so I would be like, hey, Luis, if today's not the time, da 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 da, let's actually set up a time. What's tomorrow look like for you at noon? I'm going to send you some information in the meantime, and then we can reconnect tomorrow for 15 minutes to see where we want to go from here. That way, it's not lingering super out in the future, but you have something set in stone of what is going to happen next so that you can really close the loop on that sales process.
Absolutely. And I've been talking to a lot of other women in business, and what I feel like for myself too is lately, as we're coming, maybe it's not a 2026 thing, but as you get into a new year, you just assume it's a 2026 thing. That there's quite like a trust recession where people are taking longer to buy, where
Oh,
they
absolutely.
are not quite sure. And a lot of it has, I believe, been down to firstly, there's so many more options now, right? You're constantly bombarded. It's like you want to learn how to do YouTube videos, there's like a million, right? A million people telling you how to do YouTube videos. And so, like, who do you pick? So it's also like that. There's a lot more people, but also people I feel have been burnt a lot, burnt by false marketing. They don't know
Yeah.
what's real anymore. Now AI has come in too, right? Which has entered the space very drastically. And all of a sudden I feel like people are like, is this real? Are you really on a jet plane? Are you really on the yacht? You can't quite tell. And so I feel like there is this trust recession where people are taking potentially longer to buy. Not that people aren't buying, but they're a lot more cautious.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
this something that you've also found lately? And also, if so, what are the things that you are doing right now to build that trust so that people
Mhm.
continue to invest in your services?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There is kind of a trust recession going on right now because I do think a lot of people have been burned. And I do think since COVID, there was a lot of people who just created businesses overnight. And, with all of in the States, they were handing out money left and right. So people were buying things left and right. And they were like, oh, this is easy. And traditionally, business is not that easy. And so I think there was a lot of people that had it really easy for a couple of years. And now they're really realizing that, oh, yeah, like I actually have to put some time and energy into this. And so there was a lot of people out there that purchased a lot of things that didn't really get the value for what they were looking for, so on and so forth. And so I'm big on guaranteed results in some way, shape, or form, or like these are going to be the things that are happening. You're going to be able to do these things, and I'm going to be able to do these things. And so I find that the people who there's some people out there who obviously can't guarantee results, but we can guarantee certain aspects or certain outcomes based on how much they are showing up. So, for example, like somebody that works with me, I'm like, if you work with me, we'll double your investment within a certain amount of days, but you have to make sure that you're doing these action steps. So it's not just like a blanket guarantee. It's like, hey, I know my process works. if we do if we check these milestones, and I can guarantee a certain outcome based on your action steps. And so I think guarantees are huge for building that trust. And so I think more people need to have some type of promise or guarantee or desired outcome and how they're actually going to deliver that, not just say, hey, work with me and this is what's going to happen. It's like, show me the proof, like show me the proof. And I know that doesn't sound great coming from, like a salesperson. And, a lot of people will say, what if I don't have proof? Well, you better find the proof, or you better create the proof, because that's what people are going to go after. They want to know what other clients have gotten in terms of results. What are you going to do if this doesn't work for them? What options do they have? And I think also adding a personal touch to things, because there's so many people that are automating everything right now. And so I'm a big believer in automation, but you don't want to take you out of your business. And so I still very much do sales calls and personal connection and personal touch points, because I feel like that is something that people are craving now more than ever, because we are inundated by all this AI and all of these different systems. And so when people actually get to talk to a real person, they understand that, hey, this person, is actually going to be there for me. And so I found too that in the past couple of years that more people happen to be what I call as a 2-call close, right? They're not typically closing on the first call. So I almost do a shorter introductory call to kind of get a feel for each other. So I'll do like a 15 or 20-minute call. I call this a revenue audit for myself, and I'll typically help people come up with some type of audit. But it's basically like, can I actually help you? And are you willing to take the next step? And if they are, then we're going to set up a second time where we can dive deeper into that. But it's really like a 15-minute assessment, value-packed call where I can see if I like you and if you like me, and then let's set up a secondary call to see if we're actually going to, be a good fit working together, and giving them some of the tools and information in between that time, which is where nurture sequences and automations and that type of stuff can be very helpful. But I also think that visibility is a huge part of it. And so what do we do when we're looking at somebody? We go to look at Google reviews. We go to look and see if they're online. We go to see if they're doing all of these other things. And so I know social media is a big thing for some people where they're like, I don't want to be on social media, but really it is a credibility source. And so how can you become more credible? Well, you have to become more visible to be more credible. And how do you do that? You have to show up online. You have to tell people about your business. You're not just going to be this secret weapon ninja. I mean, you might be, one in a million that just gets referrals, but that's not typically how things work. Credibility is based off of visibility and where you can get in front of and how you can change people's lives.
So some amazing tips right there, from offering guarantees, being visible, and I want to touch as well on the guarantees, because I think there's also like finding this balance between what you can guarantee
Mhm.
and what's realistic for people. Because I
Yes.
know, and I know you wouldn't offer this because we've had a chat and I know you're pretty cool. So, but I've been into programs where they've gone, and even with the guarantee, I've been like, I'm not buying into it, but I believed in the program. And so where
Mhm.
they've gone, we can get you 10K in 10 days because this one or two people did it. But their main audience were women who were just starting their businesses. Right. And so the women who got the 10K in 10 days were not at the very beginning of their business. They had established businesses, but that needed more support. Right. And
Yep.
they'd already had a validated offer. They'd already been able to sell things, and they already had an audience to sell it to. And then
Mhm.
people go, but look, you could get it. And if you don't get it, it's because you didn't follow my process, or you weren't putting in the work, or you weren't doing whatever, as opposed to just meeting people where they're at and going. And this is why I probably don't, I never make monetary guarantees, because it depends where you're at in your business. Like if I
Absolutely.
said in 30 days, you're going to make at least your money back, right? Well, I don't know what that 30 days looks like for that person. Maybe they're on day dot and they don't even have an offer yet, let alone
Mhm.
an audience to sell it to. Maybe those people do have an established audience, but during those 30 days, someone dies, right? Like,
Yep.
and half of that time they're not being able to invest in their business. And so where do you when you're setting guarantees and for the audience to understand where you can guarantee, like ways to guarantee where people can actually achieve those results, but also adding that element of, I'm not just trying to sell it to you, I'm going to
Mhm.
like actually be realistic in the expectations of what's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very realistic in my expectations and I lay everything out there. Like I'm pretty much an open book. Like this is going to be step 1, step 2, step 3. This is how many hours a week it's going to take. This and I'm like if that's not going to work for you, then this is not going to work for you. Like I'm very upfront about that and I think people appreciate that because I don't try to be convincing. I try to be direct and say, yes, you would be a great fit for this, or no, you wouldn't. And so I actually have prerequisites for people to work with me because it's kind of like you think about education, right? Like you would not expect a kindergartner or somebody in the first grade or elementary school to go take a college level test and succeed at it, right? So you have to have prerequisites for people to work with you in order to make sure that these guarantees work. And so I'll ask questions on like, how much money are you making right now? Where are you at in your business? How long have you had your business? What other things have you tried, right? And so we make guarantees based on where that person is at and accept them into a program based on where they're at. And so that's how I do it. And so what I recommend to people is figuring out throughout your process. If you don't have a process, you need to create a process. You need to create a framework. You need to create a blueprint. You need to create something that is duplicatable, but also a little bit of customizable, right? But there's going to be certain questions, certain milestones, certain things that people are going to hit. And so you can base guarantees off of those milestones. Like within the 6 months of us working together, I promise that you will feel this way or look this way or do this thing. And so think about what your clients actually want from working with you and what can be your desired result, right? So, for example, there's one gal that I work with and she works on nervous system regulation. Well, how do you guarantee nervous system regulation? So, what we do is we have incremental points. So, when you come in, you'll take an assessment and see where you're at in that assessment, and we'll guarantee that you will be at least this score or more by the end of this time working together. So, we do an assessment in the beginning, an assessment in the middle, and an assessment at the end to make sure that that person's desired outcome is increasing throughout that time working together. And so we have assessments and milestones to make sure that they're hitting those markers. And if not, we course correct so that they can hit those milestones. Another example is I work with a career coach. And so she can't guarantee that they're going to be hired for something, but she can guarantee interviews, right? And so that's one of the things that she can do. She can guarantee that your resume is going to be up to date. She can guarantee that she's going to do a personality assessment test to see what jobs are going to be the best ones for you. She's going to guarantee that you can actually get and land interviews, but she can't guarantee if somebody else is going to hire you. So we have these expectations of these are going to be the milestones, and we want to make sure that we have milestones so that if somebody is off track for your guarantee, you can course correct before it gets to the end of that guarantee and you're like, oh, I'm SOL type of thing, right? And so everybody's guarantee is going to look a little bit different. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, 30-day money back guarantee if you don't do both, like very generic guarantees. You want to have a guarantee that is going to result directly to like their desired results or the benefits or the things that they're going to achieve throughout it. And I think that you make a good point with this guarantees or these promises out there because I'm going to talk about it just a little bit, but I know we can go down a whole rabbit hole. But there's so many people out there that are selling an outcome that's not a true outcome. So, for example, one thing that I see, and I'll use round numbers, is somebody will say, oh, I made $100,000 this month. But they didn't tell you that they spent $30,000 in ads and that they actually only collected $10,000 in cash. And the rest of it is revenue from the rest of their payment plans, right? So they'll say, oh, I had a $100,000 sales month. No, you didn't. You actually had a negative $20,000 sales month after all of your expenses and the cash that you collected. So if something sounds too good to be true, chances are it's not. And if they don't have a framework that they're consistently talking about, if they don't have client results that they're consistently talking about, and if they don't have places to, refer you or freebies or resources, and if their low ticket products suck, chances are their high ticket products are not going to be that great either. So
And I feel that too, because I typically will unfollow someone if all their posts is I've made, I've made, I've made, I've made, I've made, but
mhm.
there's no talk of realist like client results or the
Yeah.
work that they do. And so if
Mhm.
I'm sitting there going, I don't even know what it is you actually do. I just
Yeah.
know that you're making money or, at least getting a revenue, then for me it is definitely like one of those red flags. But I think it
Yes.
also ties into, we were in this big area of like vibe marketing, right? And so people were buying off vibes. So it was like the glamorous shots. I'm here. I'm living my best life. I'm just making money, making money, making money. And I think that
Right.
drew a lot of people in. And then they'll make more money, right? Because people were buying into the vibe, the lifestyle, the personality, even though it was all orchestrated, right? Because I have met women who, when you see them on social media, they are living the best life, but actually they come to me and they're like, I'm not making money and I'm miserable in my marriage and I'm, all of the things.
Yep.
And then where they are making money, it is off of the vibe marketing. And it's not to say that they can't deliver once you're in. I'm not saying they don't have any skill set underneath that, but I think people are starting to step a bit away from that now
Yep.
when we're seeing people are more aware of like, well, are these images true? Is this really your life? I think people are a lot more aware of how the whole, the Instagram era, I think people have started waking up to of like, that's not reality. What it's just a slight part. And
Mhm.
especially being in business. And I think I don't know if it's just because I've been in it and I've bought into the lies before of other people that are more cautious of it. But especially people who are entering in new, they may or may not realize that when they see people who are just living their best life and posting, I made $1 million, you're right. Like, well, what's behind that? They don't tell you how they did it.
Mhm.
And it's just that vibe way of going like, just come and join me. You don't need to
Yeah.
know
Oh,
anything else other
just
than
do
I've
this.
made money.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And so this is where I tell people we need to get back into critical thinking skills and really come at our investments with a researcher hat. And I don't mean being overly analytical or anything like that, because if you really enjoy somebody and you believe in their process and you follow them for a long time, there is a certain extent to where you want to like trust your gut and trust your intuition. Yes, absolutely. But we also want to look for red flags and green flags, and we want to come at it from a researcher standpoint and look at it like, can this person really help me? Are they doing the thing that I actually want to be doing? Do they have other success, or is it just them talking about themselves? And so, one thing that I'm really big on is showcasing client results because great, it works for me. Awesome. Yes, that's how I've built my business. But you want to have the client results so that people can say, oh, yeah, it worked for this person, or it worked for that person, or it worked for this other person. And so when you can duplicate your success, that's to me true success, not just because success happened to me because I got so many people in, but when I can duplicate that success and I have proof of that duplicatable success, that's something that I can invest in.
100%. And also it allows people to see themselves in that scenario because they get to see, oh, well, I had that same problem and that person also got this result. And so where do you support your clients who are new, right? They're new, so they don't have a lot of that client experience, or they have very limited client experience. And so they don't have the testimonials to speak to, or they only have a couple where they've been practicing, for example. And
Mhm.
so outside of course, you could give free sessions in exchange for these things. Outside of that, is there anything more that they can do?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the very first things that I do say is do some type of free or low cost session in exchange for some type of testimonial, but they have to commit to a testimonial, good, bad, or ugly. Because I think sometimes people, going back to the clarity around asking for help, they'll say, oh, I just want a testimonial, blah, 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 blah. But they're not specific on what that actually looks like. And so I'm big on video testimonials and long form testimonials or podcast testimonials, something to where it's actually getting into the nitty gritty of that person's experience and not just a one liner. The other thing that I would do is I would work with people one on one until you create a framework, because there's a lot of people that are coming into the coaching and consulting space saying, oh, I'm just going to sell a digital product, or oh, I'm just going to do this group program with no process, no experience, no nothing. And so until you have a duplicatable framework, I really encourage people to work with people one on one and network as much as possible, connect with people as much as possible, put together what exactly it is that you want to help people with. And as you start to build that one on one connections, you can actually get different milestone testimonials from those people. So, for example, What was your onboarding process like? Get a testimonial about your onboarding process. Get a testimonial about the 30 days of working with that one person. Get a testimonial after 60 days of working with that person. Get a testimonial when they hit their first big goal. And so you can actually get multiple testimonials from one person based on different aspects of how you work with somebody versus just a one-on-one free session, right? And so when you start to work with somebody one-on-one, again, putting on your researcher hat, what questions am I asking? What processes am I walking this person through? And the more clients you work with in that one-on-one, you'll start to see that you have a framework develop. You'll start to see that people start to have similar results or similar success. And you'll start to share more and more of those things, right? Again, those milestone testimonials, if you will. And then you can start to really create a group program based on that. But it's really all just about connecting with people and making sure that you're asking for the testimonial, I would say is the biggest thing. So I know it was a long way to answer your question.
No, I 100% agree because I do get people, come to me too, and they go, "My aim is I just want, to create this program," and they've never had a client before. And I'm
Yeah.
like, "That's great. Tell me about your program." And quite often when they're telling me about the program, I'm like, "Well, what's the outcome of their program?" And it's still very, the airy-fairy language that, I'm someone who trained as a coach as well. So like that we know what it means, but nobody else does. And so it's like,
Yep.
well, how do you know that that's going to get that person from A to B other than that you did that yourself? How are you testing that process that it works for other people? But most importantly, how do you market that to the person in a way that they understand so they can get into the program in the first place? And so I think
Yeah.
that's
And that's
so valuable.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of those testimonials I think will come in too, is because you're getting things from their perspective. So, and again, like people want to know about your onboarding process. They want to know about the sales call. They want to know about what it was like in the first couple of weeks. And so, even if you just have one client, making sure that you're getting that feedback. And one thing that I do consistently is we do Friday wins. And so I'm getting feedback every single Friday from all of my clients, or I would say about 90% of them. Sometimes we have to follow up with them and say, like, hey, do this thing. But I get 30, 40, 50, sometimes plus testimonials or results every single week because I have conditioned my clients to tell me exactly what is working, what's not working, what are you struggling with, where do you need support, and what is your biggest win this week? How did you change your life this week, right? And so we talk about all those different things, and sometimes I'll even ask specific questions, right? But I'll have milestones throughout the month too. And so I'm like, hey, give me 2 sentences on this, or hey, can we do a podcast interview on this? And so I actually do podcast interviews too, and I'll take certain nuggets out of that podcast interview and use them for different situations, because some of them will speak to overcoming objections, some of them will speak to my onboarding experience, some of them will speak to the community. And so you want to have those key components of your program or how you work with people, and every single one of those is going to hit somebody a little bit differently.
I feel like I've not only learnt so much, my ideas are like exploding now. I'm like, all these things I'm putting in, but I know that everyone listening has also gained so much value. Honestly, when we first met, I thought this whole thing would be a rant session because you and I love a little rant. But it's been full of so much information of like, ladies, I hope you've got your pens and paper out right now and you've been like taking notes because I have for sure. And so, Sasha, thank you so much for coming, but also, and I will list everything in the description below, but where are the main places that we can find you?
Yeah, so I hang out probably the most on Instagram and then Facebook and LinkedIn. But you can find me if you type in Sausha.Davis, SAUSHADAVIS, or Sales Mama School, just about anywhere. I mean, I have the Sales Mama podcast, I have a blog, I have a Substack, I have LinkedIn, I have Facebook, I have all the things. So, or you can just head over to my site and everything's linked there too at salesmama.biz.
Awesome. And as I said, I will link that in the description of wherever you are watching or listening. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Yes, this was so fun. Thank you for having me.